We left Kino Loy in a very sticky situation, and a lot of people are asking if he'll survive. We left him at the top of the Narkina 5 prison, unable to swim to safety. If the guards catch him, he'll most definitely be tortured and possibly even killed. This is quite bleak, but there are some ways that Kino survives, some of which are insanely cool, and one particular theory involves Luthen. Today we're going to look at the most likely scenarios Kino's going to find himself in, and then we're going to see where his story can go from there. Buckle up guys, because this is going to be one hell of a ride. Whilst we don't know anything about Kino's backstory before Andor episode 8, like why he was in prison or how long he was there for, we do know that he's a leader, a survivor, and he cares about the greater good. People listen to Kino, and that's something Cassian realised himself pretty early on, and these qualities could take him far given what's happening in the galaxy at this point in time, which we'll come on to in a moment. But first, we need to map out what happens to Kino directly after episode 10. Andy Serkis, the actor who'll portray Kino Loy, actually came out and said in a recent interview that he has no idea of Kino's story going forwards, but that he's come up with a backstory himself, which we'll take into account. This leaves us with 3 possibilities for his immediate future though. Either he escapes, he stays in prison, or he dies. Now, whilst the guards were initially outnumbered during the breakout, that may not be the case now, with the few inmates that are potentially still there being the ones who can't swim or are simply too weak to make their journey to shore anyway. Once the guards realise the coast is clear and they come out from hiding, there's a good chance they'll shoot any remaining prisoners on sight, as they fear for their own safety and are aware the prison isn't in any kind of state to continue keeping them locked away for the time being. This could start a secondary fight between the remaining inmates and the guards, although I think the guards would take this round due to having access to most of the weapons in the prison, whilst also outnumbering them. Even more so if they've now called for reinforcements to help secure the complex. If the guards still intend to imprison these inmates and not kill them, and they're not transferring them to another prison to carry out their sentence, maybe as the Empire sees them at a higher risk of attempting a breakout again as they've already been part of one, the guards could be ordered to secure the prison themselves manually, the old-fashioned way, at least until the Hydra gens are back up and running. Then there's still a big chance that Kino Loy will find himself back on the chopping board purely due to the large role he played in the mass breakout, and they'd likely use him as an example to the others. They'd probably torture him and then execute him to show the others that this is what happens when you go against the Empire. So far it's not looking promising for Kino, but this is where the real fun begins. The other way Kino's story could play out would be for him to actually escape alongside the other prisoners just after Cassian went into the water. I mean, let's be fair, it would be quite hard for the two of them to find one another in the water, and you don't need to imagine what thousands of people fighting for their lives at sea would look like. You just got to watch the Titanic to see how chaotic it is. This could also be why we didn't see them escaping back on dry land together afterwards. Perhaps in this scenario he'll return home to his family and keep a low profile. Now, we do know Kino couldn't swim, so if he did jump in or he was shoved like Cassian, there's a fair chance he'd drown, but who knows, maybe he managed to do it. But I would like to think his fellow inmates would help him and support him in the water until they got to dry land, considering what him and Cassian literally just did for everyone else, which would echo nicely with his speech that he gave to the other inmates during the escape.
You need to help each other. You see someone who's confused, someone who's lost. You get them moving and you keep them moving until we put this place behind us.
Or maybe Kino and the remaining inmates found another way to escape the complex, maybe with a craft kept on site for emergencies. Going back to the guards keeping the remaining prisoners alive in this scenario, Kino stays. If we think about what Cassian said to Kino before the breakout,
whatever we're making here is clearly something they need. They can't afford to be surprised again.
It's possible they want to keep production up and running in some kind of way, using the remaining inmates they've got left, and as a result in punishment for their escaped inmates' actions, they've got a much higher workload to deal with, making it more likely for them to deter any future inmates attempting to break out again, knowing that if they were to be successful, then they'd just be left to pick up the pieces. If Kino does end up staying inside, he could simply live out his days and die in there with what would definitely be an increased sentence that he has no chance of seeing out, or now that people on the outside know what's going on, perhaps they can be rescued. Regardless of what happens to Kino, there's one important detail we need to remember. As far as Cassian knows, Kino's still in there, and if he believes what he told Kino himself, that essentially they need workers to build whatever they're building, he'll probably think they kept him alive. This is where we get into my favourite theory, the one I would like to see explored in season 2. In just 3 episodes, Kino Loy went from being a man who stuck to the system just to survive, keeping his head down, believing he was powerless to change anything, to being the hero, the man who brought all of the inmates together to fight for their freedoms, and in the process becoming a fan favourite character character in the Star Wars universe. This is a testament to how well written the character was and the actor's ability to bring him to life in such a convincing way. Although some people like not having Kino's story spelt out for us, I can't help but think he's too good of a character to be left like that, and someone who could prove to be valuable in the future. Here we go guys, Kino Loy remains at the prison with the other inmates hurrying to escape into the sea, not given a second to turn around and check on someone else. Would unfortunately be very accurate to modern life, and Tony Gilroy wants the show to be grounded. Kino and a handful of other inmates are kept behind and punished by the guards. The facility is kept on a manual lockdown until the hydro generators are back up and running. The remaining prisoners continue to work, being pushed to their absolute limits, trying to make up for the quotas on the floor due to the missing inmates, but failing miserably. Cassian's on the outside, and he knows what's going on at the prison on Narkina 5, and he believes Kino is still there. Let's say he smooths things over with Luthen somehow, as we know Cassian does join the rebellion in the near future, and I'm thinking back to Luthen's line to Lani at the end of episode 10 here.
We need heroes, Lonnie, and here you are.
What if Cassian explains to Luthen that one of the best leaders he's ever met, the man who was vital in the prison breakout, is still trapped back on Narkina 5? Perhaps he can convince Luthen to take a chance in a similar manner to how he took a chance with Cassian on Ferrix, but this time to break out Kino, who I think could be an extremely important character to the rebellion, utilising his natural talent of bringing groups of people together, just how he did inside. Luthen, Cassian and a bunch of rebels rescue Kino and bring him on board with the Grand Rebellion, and I really do think Luthen would take the opportunity if it was presented to him. He scouted Cassian as he was very aware of his talents, maybe someone pointed him in that direction as well, and the chance of having someone else on board recommended by Cassian may be too good to refuse, especially now he's down to essential numbers due to the deaths in the Aldani attack, and perhaps he's already got his next mission in mind. How do you think the story will play out? Let me know in the comments, and may the Force be with you.